Hello and welcome to this, the latest in our series of leadership interviews. I'm delighted to be joined today by Ciaran Gallagher. He's the CEO of Gymnastics Ireland, one of the sports, perhaps more than any other, which has grown over the last number of years to achieve levels of success and engagement within the community that might only have been dreamed about in years gone by. A very warm welcome, Ciaran.
Hi, Rob. Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure. Tell us a little bit about how you're coping on a personal level with all of the changes that have been wreaking havoc across our world over the last number of weeks.
I suppose in Gymnastics Ireland, most of our staff are work from home based anyway. So I suppose in that regard, working from home is something that we're used to. It's a big part of our lives. Obviously, there would be a lot of meetings either at the campus or in the centre of town, which is obviously where none of us are doing at the minute. But personally, I suppose really, I like to go to the gym. I'm missing that a bit, but Phoenix Park, I live right beside Phoenix Park, so that's become a new outdoor kind of workout area for me. Trying to still do four days a week, and aside from that, then just doing the things to make sure that I'm engaged with my friends and my family. So, all of the work Zooms are great and everybody's very connected, but your Saturdays and your Sundays, it's important to make sure you schedule in maybe your 9 p.m. Zoom with your mates, and then your next day pre or post dinner Zoom with the family. So I'm keeping those things in check, and so far, I have to say I'm happy enough to continue on as long as this is needed.
Yeah, I think we've proven to be a very adaptable bunch, all right, in terms of getting new ways of connecting and possibly, arguably, being more connected than we have been in the past, certainly on family and friends basis, just without that physical side of it. But hopefully that will come back. Tell me, how has the impact been on gymnastics? And let's look at it in terms of how it's impacted on the sport, but also at club level, and then right the way through to your elite stars, like all the way up to Rhys getting ready for what would have been Tokyo 2020 in just a few weeks' time.
I suppose really the immediate concern for us would be our club network. We're a sport with a very strong, business structure, business setup that underpins and pushes along our development. Our clubs they're not voluntary clubs anymore. They are small businesses, and they range in size from sole trader operations, with maybe an annual turnover of in around 50,000, right up to clubs now that have between 1 to 1.5 million euro in turnover and are employing anywhere between 30 to 40 people, between full-time, part-time, and casual contractors. So obviously those businesses are reliant on their membership term fees, so active gymnastics programs in the clubs. And obviously the cash flow for those has taken in many instances a very big hit. Some are in better positions than others. We did a very big kind of club impact survey once this all kicked off to try and really get a sense of the sector and where we're at. And we estimate there's approximately 1,500 people out there in our network that are employed within the sport, and the estimations are looking like it's about 80% of those to 85% have been furloughed or things, systems being, but various programs and things being put on pause. So that's a big concern, and we wanted to do everything that we could in terms of lobbying for various supports, call to action campaigns, etc., to try and support them. In terms of Gymnastics Ireland, similarly, we're a very commercial model. We self-fund 75% of our annual budget, 25% of it coming from the public funding, sponsorship, and any corporate social stuff that would tap into or anything like that. So there is a big exposure and a big risk there. We're kind of lucky in a sense that it happened at this time of the year, because from a cash flow perspective, sport with the public funding tends to come in at the start of the year. So, bank balance, etc., were good. Where the risk for us would be at the end of the year, where membership fees come in to fund the organization. They account for a third of the turnover of the organization. And I suppose the immediate impact has been, obviously, when things started to kick off, we immediately were engaged with our club network regarding program activities across core areas such as education, events being a very big commercial one for us, and then our performance areas. And, immediately, we had to pull the plug on a number of events, because it became very apparent that while we have events insurance and everything in place, we knew that there was an exposure there. This was before the social distancing, matters really took hold. So we'd already agreed to pull the plug on a couple of events before the government came out with firmer restrictions. But then, of course, as the restrictions, kind of got tighter, we realized that was a big area of the business that, was going to be out, without a doubt, up until the end of June. So we took the measures to cancel all activities in that regard.
You did manage to get away one of the big events. I know I was out in the Sport Ireland campus just before the lockdown came, probably a week or maybe 2 weeks. That was good timing in order to get it away.
Yeah, that was a bit of a scary one, and it really demonstrated obviously the medical concerns are one thing, but the financial risk to organizations like ours. We had been, our events are quite big now. That was an event with 6,000 people involved. And we've been rigging in the National Indoor Arena at the Sport Ireland campus for 2 days, Thursday, Friday. We were fully set up. This was I think the 6th of March. And we were sitting there waiting for Leo to come out and make his statement as to whether or not activities were going to be allowed to occur over the weekend. And at that point, these events, they're range in turnover for us, 100 to 150K to run. So at that point, we would have been exposed to a minimum of probably in around 100K. And of course, then, touching base with our insurers, it was clear that, global pandemic outbreaks are, excluded from, I'm yet to come across a policy that covers it. So if anybody knows of one,
no.
You can circulate the detail to me, but that was, we just about got away with that. And at that moment, then that's when we stepped into kind of risk management, process. And then obviously when the government started to firm things up, it was very clear what we had to do. So that essentially will, it'll take a huge whack off Gymnastics Ireland's turnover. It's those events and programs fund themselves. So, there's no immediate risk to Gymnastics Ireland in terms of our core staff team, which we keep that quite tight. But we do a lot of work on those programs through contractors. So there's 30 to 40, individuals, individual contractors and contractors through companies such as our events riggers, our digital content company. And we just had to take the decision, at that point, to terminate all of those annual contracts and tell the guys, listen, we're really sorry. We appreciate the position. And the minute that we can get back to business, we'll recontract you, in trickle down economics effect,
Yeah. In terms of that national governing body side of it and your club network, obviously you're in a slightly different position to many sports in that they are very much part of a business within their local communities, but each of those would operate to a large degree as an individual business. And how much have you felt that they've looked to you for leadership and guidance and assistance in terms of reaching out and gaining those government supports, but also giving them a sense that they're not in this on their own?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. While they're businesses, we're also in sport, we're a community, and a lot of times, people will maybe see releases and information be released by government, HSE, whatever, but the place that they're comfortable and coming to get clarifications would be to us. So while we're not the experts, they come and they want to have those conversations. So in the early days, there was a lot of very frightened and very concerned people. There was a lot of, phone calls that the staff, including myself across the board, were taking, with people just, worried about their businesses, worried about employment, worried about all of the things that you could imagine from, their commercial rents and mortgages for their premises, which our biggest clubs would be paying, 10, 15 grand in commercial rents per month. And ensuring that they basically had some kind of measures in place or cash flow to protect those. So yeah, obviously once the government started to announce the various, COVID-19 subsidy schemes, that alleviated a bit of the pressure. we then started to, work with the likes of the Federation of Irish Sport, and I've been in various, Zoom calls with the minister and various other, CEOs, etc., to kind of, represent the sector. Commercial rents and mortgages were something that we started to raise, because obviously the measures that have been applied so far really exist only technically for the residential sector. So again, that will be something that would help some of our larger clubs if they knew that there was the same measures applied to commercial rents and mortgages. So yeah, we've just been doing everything that we can to represent and try to help and guide our membership. And building on from that, we built out a campaign which we launched just on Good Friday, which is basically designed to try to encourage people that are perhaps have yet to be financially adversely affected by this outbreak, if they're in a position to continue to pay their term fees, or perhaps make a donation to their club to assist the clubs with a level of cash flow to go ahead and to do that. So that launched out, and we're really trying to just, in that regard, tap into perhaps some goodwill that could be out there.
I know we carried that story, and it looked like a very reasoned reach out to those who can, to do a little bit to assist those who can't. What was the reaction like to it across the board? Did you get feedback from the clubs to say thank you that this is having an impact, or is it the kind of thing that's just almost a gentle nudge and a reminder to people?
Yeah, I think it kind of was born out of a lot of discussions with clubs. It was clear to us that our clubs have various different charging structures. Some of the clubs would have taken in their cash, the majority of their cash flow in January, that would take them right up to the summer. But some clubs would split out between a pre-Easter term and a post-Easter term. So those were the clubs that were really starting to feel the risk in terms of what their cash flow was looking at. So they were asking us, what could we do for them? And this was the kind of thing that we felt, if we go out there and we put out this message, it could assist them in some regard. And it actually was also borne out our new chairman, Shane O'Connor, who's also the Athletes Commission chair of the OFI. Shane's kids are in gymnastics clubs, and I was having conversations with him. And, just in a loose kind of conversation, he said, well, I've told Mike, his kids' club, that he's going to continue to pay his term fees. And it was just, when you started to hear that as to how people were actually thinking about things, we kind of internally thought maybe there is something here that, we have to be very sensitive about it, but maybe we can just, push across that message. So the reaction has been, certain clubs will really, use it. Other clubs, maybe some of our clubs are operating with reserve funds, so they're comfortable to keep going at present point. But I think generally everybody understands what it's about.
Okay, and the fact that we're all in the same boat together from across business, government, and everybody else. There has been more talk over the weekend and in recent days about a possible easing of some of the restrictions, and a gradual coming out of lockdown. How do you see that applying at the moment in terms of the clubs? Because the likelihood is that it will be more towards local community club-based activity that we're able to get back into first, as opposed to the larger international or even national events. And is that something that you've been able to begin planning for and thinking about, or are we too early in that phase at the moment?
The discussions have started even behind the scenes within the sector, engagements with Sport Ireland and other chief executives, etc. I suppose the key thing is, before, we can all come up with as many ideas as we want, but this is going to be, scientifically and medically driven. But yes, we're starting to look at, obviously other countries are starting to release, their restrictions to a certain degree. I see that the first baseball was thrown in South Korea, I believe, today. Fair enough, no audiences in place. But I suppose the key thing for us, and what I understand so far from any medical briefings or information that I've been given, is that it will come down to being able to operate in close quarter environments. So our position would be, we would like to see a phased return in some form for our clubs, for their activity from June through to August. And that may, assuming that we're in a position, that may require, a real reassessment and replanning in terms of club programming. It's key that the square meter distance around an individual is the driving factor here. So if it's 2 meters, that's something that has to obviously be considered. How many people are you allowed in an indoor environment would be relevant to us, at various levels of social distancing restrictions. And then the other thing would be, body contact protocols. Obviously, some sports are incredibly body contact orientated and others aren't. Gymnastics, there's some of our disciplines that would be extreme body contact, such as acrobatic discipline, but other disciplines, there's the possibility to ensure that we can work with these. And definitely for the participation level programming, which is the bread and butter financial model of the clubs, I definitely think that there's something there that we can do, but we need clear indications. And I've put forward the idea of, I'm a bit of a simple guy myself, so almost like a traffic light system style setup where, if red is what we're in right now, so we know we can't do anything, but if we're on an amber setting, we know that the restrictions are as follows. And, if something comes out in that regard, at least then we can start to build out what for our club network and in partnership with our club network, because our clubs are very innovative, creative people and minds. We can start to build out what viable operation in those kind of scenarios could possibly look like, and start to, kind of build out what the possible, snags on those areas could be as well.
Okay, I know we as in sport is not going to be the highest priority for NFET and the medical experts who are going to draw up the guidance, but are there organizations internationally that you would be looking to from a specific gymnastics perspective to say, this is the way that we think it can be worked, so that you can actually present a solution for verification almost from the public health officials, as opposed to just being in a position of waiting for them to get through the list of all of the different businesses and organizations and activities?
Well, the only, I suppose, specifically relevant to gymnastics would be the International Gymnastics Federation's Medical Commission. I know are looking at, different potential scenarios, but again, where I see the issue with that is, I think it's just going to really come down to what the stats and the numbers are in your own geographical territory. And so perhaps there's guidelines and I'd say there's probably guidelines and there's definitely help that they can provide, but I really just think, that is going to be the key thing. It's going to be working with our local authorities, and national authorities to ensure that we can fit into a model that works for whatever levels of distancing are required. And I mean, I had a call with a number of our staff this morning, and, initially, I suppose everybody was hoping that we could all get back into the swing of things by June. The summer, everything would be great, and then we'll be back to national events by the end of the year, and September to December. But I suppose that's the big thing for Gymnastics Ireland. If our clubs can get back to a level of business, then that's the priority focus for us right now. And anything else, we'll just wait to see what government says.
Okay, and that's the one area which I guess we've still got some measure of control over as well, once the restrictions do start to be eased, touch wood and please God, and every other form of exhortation that we can do. In terms of the upper end of the sport, so obviously the 99% is going to be the key priority, but we've had great momentum in Irish gymnastics at the very highest level, all the way through to the pinnacle now of Rhys, going to Tokyo, hopefully representing us with a decent medal chance. How has that sort of sense of international competition and our part that we play in it, and I know Gymnastics Ireland has got judges and officials that are representing us at the highest level as well, how far away do we think is the sport in terms of getting back into an international level of competition and achieving qualification standards for Tokyo?
Well, obviously, thankfully, Rhys's qualification is carried through to next year anyway. That's been confirmed by our international federation. There are 2 other gymnasts who would be in line for qualification potentially, one female and one male gymnast for us. And basically, I suppose really we're waiting. The European Gymnastics Federation just sent out actually a kind of questionnaire survey style thing this morning, trying to gather some data on where each of the nations are at. The European Championships was meant to be the final stage for us of that qualification system, and of course that there was one in Paris in actually now, and one in Baku for the men in May. Both of those are obviously out of the equation. I can't really see them being run by the end of the year, to be honest with you. I think global sport is looking at a 2021 reset, I think, and really, even would that be a priority for us in terms of if we were asked the question, do you want these at the end of the year? I don't even necessarily think that that's the right thing in terms of preparation and what the priorities have to be, even just for people in their lives. So I suppose for our top guys, obviously we base our program at the campus, the Sport Island campus. Obviously when the restrictions really were implemented, to the degree they are now, the campus was closed, so everybody that was there, including Rhys, was sent home. We've been trying to engage with them through our performance department just to make sure that they're maintaining their levels of fitness, also looking at issues of anything to do with mental health or concerns or wellness, and trying to help them structure what they're doing at home. And I suppose, again, in an ideal world, what would be great is if we were able to phase back into our performance program operation on campus from June through to August in some form. That would be great. And then I suppose what we're all hoping for is that we can pick up to the end of the year and really enter into 2021. I think that's the key thing, ideally ready to rock and get back to business.
Okay, I saw early on in this chapter, I saw Rhys switching the remote control on his television in a way that most of us would only ever be able to imagine, lifting himself out of the chair in a way that only a proper true gymnast can. I know that Luke Carson has been running some home workout sessions as well. Have they been going down well? It looks as though they've achieved a fair degree of popularity on Facebook and social media streams.
Yeah, they've been going down well. I mean, there's two styles of the fitness workouts as we've launched them. One is the ones that Luke's doing as our national coach, and they're targeted at our national series gymnasts. That would be probably about 20% of the membership base that are involved in the competitive programs at various ends. And then we've, to look after the participation end of things, we've launched a club takeover. So clubs have lined up kind of in a row, first come, first served, and our guys are working with them 3 times a week. They're taking over our social media channels, and they're, essentially delivering a 20-30 minute workout session on their own. And yeah, on both fronts, the engagement's been really good. It's helping to keep, I suppose, the community engaged. And then the clubs have very kind of clear guidelines and benchmarks as to what they can do while they're engaging at home, because that's one thing that we do want to make sure that the engagement and the work that's being done at home is safe. It's, not risky. It's fitness based rather than skills based, so that, we don't, as we all know, our health service is, massively under pressure at the minute. The last thing we need to do is run any risky activities that would require x-rays and things like that, because those kind of standard, normal operation medical services are they're not at the minute. So yeah, all going really well, I have to say.
Okay, it does. No, it definitely seems to be. I think we should be tuning into local gymnastics clubs as opposed maybe to Joe Wicks. He'll have enough people watching him from over in Britain. That sense of the club still being engaged and the membership still connected into you would suggest that you've got grounds for optimism, that the momentum which has been coming through in gymnastics very visibly and very obviously over the last number of years will be able to be picked up again as soon as we do come out of this. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, our membership base are incredibly innovative. They've managed to create what we're now calling a micro industry within the sports sector. 15 years ago, 15 years ago, gymnastics was 100% voluntary kind of driven, sport, and now we're in a completely different space. So we've got some really good creative people and creative minds. And as I say, as long as we understand what the various levels of normal, new normal, whatever that is, look like, I think that, yeah, we can adjust, we can ensure that we can, have people involved in our sport, that our clubs can get back to business, as in their actual financial business, and that we can get over this period of time while we wait for the medical and scientific communities to come up with, obviously, the big solution is the vaccine or therapeutic treatments. I believe that's something that basically we're adaptable enough to manage in the short term, and then I think, yeah, go back to a position of growth for the sport. That's definitely something that we can, as we were saying internally, bounce back from. Kind of, no pun intended, but every pun intended.
Yeah, well, I think, from a leadership point of view, you're doing a great job in both guiding your own sport and also giving encouragement to others. If there was one sort of idea or one sense of encouragement, words of encouragement that you could give to the wider sports community as we're going through this, is there something that you could sum up for me in just a couple of sentences?
I think it's been generally really well recognized by everybody, governments, media, on and on, just how important sport is. And I think that, everybody knows that it's part of most people's weekly life, and it's not something that is going to go away. It's going to come back. We just have to, I suppose, be patient and let our scientific and medical leaders do their job, and then we can all be back to all of the various games, comps, matches, whatever it is. We can all be, back to them and enjoying a more regular form of life, I think.
Okay, doing the right thing at the right time and in the right way, I guess, is all we can hope for. That's what we try and do at Sport for Business. Our daily news digest continues. It will be landing in your inboxes every morning in or around 9:30, and then we're producing additional content each afternoon as well. We've got a webinar series every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 o'clock, looking at different aspects, and we will continue to be joined by leaders from the world of sport and business from across our community of members. Ciaran Gallagher is one of those leaders, and thanks very much, Ciaran, for taking the time to chat with us today and give us that sense of encouragement and optimism that everything that you've done in gymnastics over the last couple of years is just paused at the moment, but will be ready for the restart when that comes.
Cheers, Rob. Thank you.